Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheila with another story for you today. And our story is called The Brave Little Girl. Dick was a bright yellow canary. He belonged to a little girl named Minnie. Now, Minnie had gotten the canary from her parents for her birthday present, and they'd also bought a big gold cage for Dick to live in. Well, Dick liked that real well, but the other thing he liked was when Minnie would open the little door of the cage and he would get to fly. He would fly all around the living room, all around the dining room. He might stop and perch on the curtains and sing. And sometimes, if Minnie was eating, he would come and sit on the edge of her plate and chirp and chirp. And if Minnie were to whistle, do you know what Dick would do? He would start singing in his birdie voice at the top of his lungs, and it would fill the whole house with sweet music. Well, Minnie, she absolutely loved Dick. She couldn't even remember what it was like before he lived in her house with her. Well, one day, when Minnie came downstairs, she went over to say good morning to Dick. And then she saw it. That little tiny door was wide open, and little Dick was gone. Minnie, she started rushing through the house calling him, Dick, Dick, where are you? She searched from the top of the house all the way to the basement. There wasn't any Dick. She went outside and she peered behind all the bushes. She looked and she looked and she looked. But Dick wasn't anywhere to be found. And then she saw their dog and cat. They were sitting there together, and Minnie became very suspicious. She went over and she said, Have you seen Dick, either of you? Did you do something with him? Well, she looked at them. Finally, she said, They're innocent. I don't know how she knew, but she had looked at that kitty cat and she thought, that cat likes to eat birds. But they said they were innocent. So she went back into the house. 3 weeks passed. That's a long time. And nobody saw anything about Dick. He was just gone. She was so sad. She sat down and she said, I don't think I could ever find a canary that was as good and as loving and as sweet and could sing as pretty as Dick could. Oh, what am I going to do? Well, while she was sitting there thinking about it, one of the neighbors came to the door. And she said, Minnie, I think I know where your canary is. She said, You do? Where? Show me, quick. And the lady said, Okay, come on, we'll go right now. And she took Minnie's hand and Minnie started running. And the lady said, No, no, he's that way. So they turned and they went toward the well. There was a big well at the corner of the field. Now, this wasn't a well that had a nice little brick fence around it. It was just a big hole in the ground. Well, the lady held on to Minnie's hand and they went and they peered down into that deep, deep hole. It was dark down there and it was a long ways down. They could see a little bitty speck of sunshine on the top of the water in the bottom of the well. And the lady said, "Shh, shh, listen." And Minnie, she listened very carefully, and way down from the bottom of that well, she heard, "Cheep, cheep, cheep." And Minnie said, "It's Dick. I know it's Dick. How are we going to get him out? It has to be Dick. Cheep, cheep, cheep." The lady said, "Let's go find your father. Maybe he has an idea." So they rushed off till they found Father. And Minnie said, "Oh, Dad, we found him. We found him. He's in the bottom of the well. We got to go get him. Come, we got to go get him." And Father said, "That well's really deep. I don't have a ladder that's long enough. It's impossible." Minnie said, "But Dad, we've got to rescue him. We've just got to. I'll go down and get him." And Dad said, "You go into that dark well? No, no." And Minnie said, "But we just have to. He'll die. Please, Dad, please." Well, finally, when Dad realized how earnest and how determined little Minnie was to save Dick, he said, "Okay, we'll try." He went off and he got two very long ropes. And Minnie, she had an idea. She said, "Let me get in the water bucket." It was a big, round wooden bucket with a big handle over the top, and it was heavy. Dad said, "Oh, he didn't know. He was worried about his little girl." But before he could know what was even happening, little Minnie jumped in the bucket, and there she stood, holding on to that handle. And she said, "Hurry, Dad, I can hear him. He's calling to me." Well, Dad took one of those long ropes and he tied it round and round very securely around his little girl under her arms. Well, Minnie, she said, "Hurry, Dad, hurry." He tied that other rope very tightly on top of the handle, and he said, "Are you sure, Minnie? It's dark down there." She said, "We have to save Dick." So Dad carefully, oh so carefully, started lowering that big wooden bucket with the precious cargo of little Minnie in it. Down, down, down she went. And as she went down, the further down she went, the darker it got. She looked around, and then she heard it again. "Cheep, cheep, 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 cheep." just as if Dick knew that she was coming to rescue him, she looked around. She wasn't afraid. She was going to save her friend. Down she went till finally that big bucket hit the water with a big splash. And Dad stopped letting the rope down. Now it was really dark down there. She looked this way and she looked that way and she thought, Dick, where are you? And then all of a sudden she heard it again. Cheep, cheep, cheep. The cheeps were more excited than they had been. And Minnie, she looked around, and there, just a little ways up on that stone wall, was a little tiny ledge, a little stone ledge. And sitting on top of it, who do you think it was? There was her yellow canary, Dick. Cheep, 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 cheep. Well, she reached out and she carefully grabbed him and she put him to her and she said, I've got him, Dad. I've got him. Pull me up. Pull me up. And as she held Dick, and the other hand, she held on to the bucket, she started to slowly go up, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Finally, that bucket came to the edge of that well, and Dad pulled it out, and the sun was shining bright out there. It wasn't dark anymore. And Dad pulled Minnie out of the bucket and he squeezed her so tight and he kissed her on the cheek. He was so glad his little girl was safe. That had been scary for Dad. And he said, Oh, Minnie, weren't you scared? And Minnie said, No, Daddy, I knew you were holding the rope. Well, the neighbor lady and Dad were very glad that little Dick had been found, and he was carefully and lovingly put back in his golden cage. And he started to sing, just as if he knew, I'm home again, I'm home again. Well, that night, Dad told the story to Mom, all about Dick being down in the well and how brave little Minnie had been and how she had said, I wasn't afraid because you were holding the rope to Dad. And Dad looked at Mom and he looked at little Minnie and he said, I hope we remember that there's somebody else that's looking down into this dark world where we live. And that's Jesus. And he's got a hold of our rope too. And he someday is going to pull us up to be right there with him in heaven. And he'll give us the biggest hug there ever was. Thank you, boys and girls. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.